There are plenty of ways to do a retro effect. You can get Lightroom effects, you can get Photoshop effects, you can go to websites, they've got them on Instagram. But let's say you want to do one of your own like this one. Well, that's what we're going to do here today. So this image I just pulled from Pixabay, looks like user Dana Tetanus, and this is the one we're going to work with for the purpose of this tutorial. All right, with your image open, first thing you want to do is create a new adjustment layer. So go down to your lower right, hit new adjustment layer, and the one we want is curves. Okay, now with our adjustments panel, which should have popped up right here, we want to change our drop down to red, and we want to add just a little bit of red. So I'm going to expand this a little bit to give me more room to play. So I'm just going to go right in the middle, click with my mouse, and I'm just going to drag it a little bit to the right, and you see it changing right away. So we're going to throw some red in here, probably about that much. Your image might vary a little bit, so with this one you just kind of want to eyeball it a little bit. Next thing we're going to adjust is our blue. So drop down to blue, and on the blue we're going to go in the opposite direction. We're going to drag that down just a little bit. See, get a nice kind of brown tone here. Now I want to increase the amount of blue a bit in the shadows as well, so I'm going to grab the lower left point here and I'm going to drag that up. And so pay attention to the shadows, and you can really see already this is getting a nice retro look to it. This is definitely that filter application that you can throw on here that a lot of people are going to use. And now I want to go to the upper right, and I'm going to drag that one down just a little bit. And again, just kind of eyeball it, but not too much. You can kind of see just below the first line on the lower left, just a little bit on the upper right, and just a little bit in the middle. Okay, we want to do a new adjustment layer and click that. This time we're going to go solid color. And for the color, we want kind of a purplish magenta look. There we go. I'm happy with that. Keep in mind that you can go back and adjust this later if you need to. Hit OK. Okay, now we're going to blend this in with the image. So go from your blend modes, change that from normal to soft light. There we go. Quite heavily purpled. So let's drop the opacity on that. And again, you just kind of want to eyeball it. I like right about there. So I think I'm going to go 30% on mine. Yours might be a little bit lower, say like 20% or a little bit higher at 35, but I probably wouldn't go any higher than that. Okay, now we're going to have some fun with it and do some burning around the edge. And first thing we want to do is create a new layer. You can rename this if you want, like the collar that we're going to do. So I usually don't, but let's do it for the purpose of a tutorial. So I'm just going to call that red. Let's go pick a brush. So we want this to be nice and wide, so I'm going to increase my size quite a bit. There we go. And we want it to be a soft brush. Now we're going to go down to our foreground color, click on that, and we want a nice kind of bright red. There we go, that's good. Click OK. And paint some nice red around the edge. Maybe a little bit down here. There we go. Not too much. Basically, we're going to do, this is just kind of a little bleed. You can even do a little bit over here if you want as well. Just kind of around the edges. As always, eyeball it. Let's add some yellow now. So we're just going to add a new layer. Let's call this one yellow. And I'm sure you've already guessed it. Let's click some yellow. Hit OK. And we're going to do the same thing. Just paint a little yellow around the edges. Not as much with this one. I'm not even really going to do any over on the right side here. I mostly want it on the left side. Okay, well, this is pretty blatantly obvious. So what are we going to do here? We're going to blend it. So I'm going to click on my blend for the red first, and I'm going to change from normal to screen. Click on my yellow, change normal to screen. And I still think it's a bit too much, so I'm going to drop my opacity on both of these quite a bit. There we go. That's it. So really kind of a nice retro looking image. Let's take a look at the original. So you can see very natural looking. This is totally what we would expect from a modern camera. Do kind of a nice retro. I mentioned that you can always adjust stuff later. So let's say maybe I want a little less magenta in there. You can adjust your opacity if you want, that kind of stuff. There we go. Let's drop this down now that I'm looking at it. And I think my yellow is a bit too much as well. Let's drop that down a bit. Yeah, that looks nicer. And of course you can continue to play with it a little bit if you want. So I kind of want to bring down some of the shadows a little bit. So you can do that through curves, or you can do it through levels, whichever you prefer. I'm just going to do a quick level adjustment. And just kind of bring that down just a little bit more. Final tip, let's say you want to reuse this effect in the future, but you don't want to have to go through all of the steps. Well, when you start the whole process, click on your actions and create yourself a new action. I have a video on this channel of how to create your own actions, so check that out. There you go. Hope you found this useful.